and good evening to our viewers. Welcome to the Evening Review Show. I'm your host, Matthias Aufiko. Well, the country's national housing backlog continues to be stuck at around 300,000 units. And stakeholders such as banks and others are working around the clock to devise strategies and measures to try and curb it from going up and instead for it to go down. We're joined in studio tonight by Mr. Beukes. He's the manager of home loans at Letshego Namibia. Mr. Beukes, good evening and welcome, sir.
Evening. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, it's good to have you here. It's good to have you here. I think first things first, Letshego has been in the news in recent days. Of course, the funding agreement that you and your team signed with Ongos Valley Development. Maybe just an intro and a summary as to what that's all about.
Yes, the agreement was formalized late last week with our CEO and the chairman of Ongos Property Development, formalizing and signing the agreement.
Yeah.
Essentially, the agreement entails us as Letshego Bank to provide funding for end users. That's now the clients interested in acquiring properties through Ongos. So providing them with an alternative means, you know. But it goes more than just a home loan, you know. I don't know if you can recall some years ago, our former president, Puhamba, had quite a tongue lashing with one of the property developers in terms of the product that they've put out on the market.
Yeah.
So Ongos Development, the developers have really gone all out, you know. It's essentially a middle income to low income housing development. But the product that they've put forth to the market is something that you could be proud of, you know. They use state-of-the-art development techniques. They've incorporated grey water usage, solar electricity, as well as recycling, making use of recycling.
Yeah.
So that essentially speaks to us as Letshego, because in providing financing to our end users, that needs to be done in a sustainable manner, you know. We have targets to achieve and we've got shareholders to keep happy, but we need to provide funding to our consumers that uplifts the community, you know.
Yeah. Some viewers would say Letshego is known for loans and working with civil servants only. How did this come about? So
in 2016, we received our banking license. So essentially, Letshego Bank is a fully fledged commercial bank, offering a wide array of services. So we've got your traditional check accounts, savings accounts, we've got investment accounts. We've now recently ventured into mortgage financing. So we provide mortgage loans to consumers. And our target market really is all Namibian nationals, you know. We're not limited to government employees. If you are permanently employed or self-employed, we are willing to provide you financial solutions on that. So a third element that we also look at is consolidations. So obviously there is pros and cons to it, but essentially what we're looking at is to say if the valuation allows for it, let's look at consolidating your short-term debt with your mortgage bond. That would free up the consumer's disposable income. And we have a conversation with the client to say, you're in a better position now to make up additional payments to your mortgage bond. That obviously allows you to repay this bond faster and get out of debt sooner. Another element of it is that when one looks at the civil servants, they're one of the biggest workforces. There's no real mechanism in place that assists or aids them in terms of mortgage financing. So we've essentially said that we'd provide a favorable interest rate for government employees.
Yeah. Okay. So again, there's always been this debate, and it always creeps up in informal talks to say, why is it that I can rent a flat for 15,000 a month and I've not been skipping any of my monthly payments, but I can't qualify for a $15,000 per month property from the bank? What are some of maybe you could just enlighten the public as to how things work in the background when you guys consider financing property?
Yeah, and that's actually something that pops up a lot. And I think one main thing to consider is that in looking at your total income, we only utilize a certain portion of that towards a servicing of a home loan. So that is either between 25 or 35% of your total income. So you would find yourself in a situation, for example, where your income is 30,000, but the maximum repayment to income, that's the banking jargon we use, is only 10,000, meaning that you could only qualify for a mortgage repayment of 10,000, but you are currently renting for 15,000. So in that instance, unfortunately, we have to ensure that we provide or we use sustainable mechanisms. Sustainable mechanisms to ensure that we don't overextend our clients, because eventually, if you cannot afford to pay 15,000 rent a month, you would gradually look for a cheaper property. So as your mortgage bond, it's a 15, 20-year loan. So we have to ensure that you do qualify for this and that there's sustainability in the loan.
I think the other thing is also, maybe you can tell us how the uptake has been in terms of applications and so on. How has that been since you entered the home loan space?
So I think generally in the market, there's been a trend for home loan financing. Also, if you look at the dynamics between the availability of properties, I mean, if you gauge the real estate websites or books, you'd always find a lot of properties that's available, but most of these properties are 2 million and above, and there's not really a properties available in the lower end of the segment. So there's a mismatch between what's available in the market and what consumers are qualifying for. Maybe secondly, and I don't think that is something that is inherent to Letshego. We've got, over the last 2 years, we had an increase in repo rates of about 4.5%. That has really subdued credit take-up, especially in the consumer segment. And if you also look at the inflation costs, costs are rising, your municipality expenses have gone up, food, fuel, all of this have gone up, and your salaries really haven't matched that, so yes, we would have wanted to be in a better position, but I think this also aligned us and made provision that we provide a decent, suitable product for the market that caters for the needs of the market.
I know we spoke offline, of course, that is about how there's been a high number of applications, but when it comes to the approval side, it doesn't really balance. And you said it really speaks to the sort of the credit profiles of the applicants. And maybe speak to us about that and why it's important for consumers to keep a healthy credit profile.
Really. I mean, if one looks at the conversion rates have been quite low. That is now the number of applications that have come through and the actual approvals that we do. But there are a few things that we normally discuss with our clients to say these are the markers that not necessarily Letshego, but lenders look at in terms of mitigating your risk. And that is generally how you pay your creditors, and we get that info from your credit profile. So if you've got an agreement in place with a creditor to pay him or her on the 25th, you've got to honor that agreement. Late payments obviously reflect negatively on your profile. And then secondly, your level of credit take-up. So if you take up credit constantly on a monthly basis, that speaks to a client having cash flow constraints and then needing that credit to sort of subsidize his or her lifestyle. And then thirdly, generally the type of credit you take up. Obviously there's unproductive credit and there's productive credit. So these are mainly the things we look at. Perhaps on another note as well is how you conduct your account. Because creditors or credit divisions within the bank, they don't have a glass ball whereby we predict the future. So it's primarily based on history of the last 6 months and history of how you conduct your account, how you conduct your financial affairs. And this information we get really guides us to say that, is this risk worth taking? Because the agreement that we enter, it's a long-term agreement. It's a 20-year agreement. So we have to ensure that this client, given all things considered, this client will be in a position to repay this loan.
Having said that, so from a service provider perspective in this instance, what are banks like Letshego doing to ensure that the financial education and awareness is readily out there for consumers?
Well, I can't really speak for other banks in the sector, but what we are trying to create is to create financial wellness and financial education. Wellness being, you can just imagine the stress people go through if you know that come 25th you are unable to pay your rent or you are unable to pay your creditors. I mean, people end their lives of that. And then really in terms of education, whereby when we sit with a client, we want them to understand that this is the pros, this is the cons of taking up credit. And especially with the consolidations that we do, because essentially we're creating affordability for that client. So we want that client to understand that in doing this, it doesn't help us. In doing this, the client should be in a better position. We should ensure that by taking up this credit, it creates a sustainable product for the client.
One would also like to, from an education perspective, I know you mentioned the handling and the discipline of the account and everything. And you mentioned some markers that you really look at when you are perusing these applications. So, and you mentioned the 6-month timeline and so on also. So what is it you are doing also as a bank, Letshego, that is, of course, to also just really hold the hands of the clients when they walk to you and you see this is their status. So perhaps what is it that they can do to mitigate the situation?
I mean, buying a house it's a daunting task, and if you look at credit, we delve into detail of your personal information. So we really try and assist clients to say that if we can't approve your loan now, this is what we need to do. You need to work with us for the next 6 or 8 months for us to be in a better position to then provide you the financing that you're requiring. So it becomes a mechanism whereby we communicate with the clients and also empower and uplift the clients.
Also, just from a financing perspective, what are some of the perhaps the red flags or shortcomings you've picked up in the market as financing is concerned that you think should be looked at? Because I know financing is a big component of ensuring that there's enough houses in the market. So what are some of the things that you and your team have perhaps picked up that can be looked at from a financing perspective?
Obviously, education, one of them, but also in terms of the friction cost, because obviously there's cost involved in providing financing. So with Letshego Bank, what we've said is that with our home loan, there's no monthly service fees. So we try and remove that cost from the client's perspective. Again, with us providing fire cover for the first 3 years, that also allows the consumer to just have gradually ease into home ownership. Because I mean, it's fine renting a property, but once you become an owner of it, it means even the maintenance of that property. You've got to ensure that your property is well maintained. You've got to do the maintenance on it. So there's a lot of things that fall on your shoulders as owner of a property.
Well, to our viewers, it's from the first half of the show. We'll be back for the second half of the show. Stay tuned. Welcome back from the short break. Mr. Beukes, perhaps be sitting here as a consumer, what are some of the tips that you'll be able to share with me if I'm planning to buy a property, say, within the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things you need to consider. I think first and foremost, as a consumer, you need to understand your financial position, and we normally say, take stock,
Yeah.
look at what your expenses are, because essentially you need to prove how you're going to repay this bond,
Yeah.
right? So ensure that you truly understand your financial position. Secondly, I think it all starts off with a pre-approval.
Yeah.
You need to get a pre-approval from a financier, because that really matches what you qualify for what's in the market.
Yeah.
And then in terms of Letshego, we do offer pre-approvals, and our pre-approvals are free, right? So our pre-approval is essentially a full application that we do.
Yeah.
So the only difference really is there's no property match to this. So we do a full assessment. Once the application is approved, once the approval is pre-approval is granted to you, we issue you with an approval letter, and then that letter is valid for 90 days. So that obviously gives you confidence to engage either real estate agents or sellers.
Yeah.
Thirdly, generally look at the type of property you're buying. Look at how long the property's been in the market. Because something might happen that you need to sell this property.
Yeah.
However, if this property has been in the market for the last 6 months, and you acquire this property, and then something comes up that you need to sell it, and lead time would also be about 6 months for you.
Yeah.
And then generally ensure that you've got cash for your cost, because there is cost associated with owning a property.
Yeah.
And these costs have to be paid. So if these costs cannot be included in your financing, then you need to make provision for it.
Yeah.
So at a bond of about $1 million, you're looking at about in the region of 64,000. That is now in terms of your transfer fee, your bond registration fee, and then bank's admin fee as well.
Yeah. Okay. Are there perhaps other home loan products that Letshego offers?
Yes. So we do offer switch bonds. That is where a client wants to move over his bond from a different institution over to Letshego. We do offer that. We also provide funding for plot and plan. That is now where you would want to buy a vacant piece of land and construct a house on it. We provide funding for that. And then we also do further bonds and re-advances on our current facilities.
Yeah.
Maybe just to elaborate a bit more in terms of switch bonds. So like I mentioned earlier, we do offer banking services. So we can provide you with a competitive rate, as well as better terms and structures on what your current offering is.
Okay. Perhaps also, if we have to just maybe switch up the conversation a bit, from a financing perspective, what would you say are some of the shortcomings from a systemic point of view, really, that we're still facing as a country, that's really crippling us from attaining our housing delivery objectives?
I think you mentioned it earlier, the fact that the housing backlog is about 300,000 units. Most developers, or if you look at what most developers are putting out, it's more for your upper end of the market. There's quite a few, not really a lot of developers that focus on your lower end of the market, and I think that's where Ongos property developers also come in. Traditionally, us as Letshego, that has also been our target market, but we're not limited to that. So. Essentially, we don't have a minimum or a maximum amount, depending on where a client wants to buy, we can provide financing, provided that property falls within a municipal area and a mortgage bond can be registered over that property.
Yeah. Because I mean, we've always heard these talks that banks are part of the problems, they're driving up the cost and so on. Those are always part of the informal talks, and developers would always say the cost of land from local authorities is expensive, hence the price. How do we navigate through this? Because surely we must find middle ground to this.
Totally, I agree with you. And I think that's, if you look at land prices in Windhoek, land prices in Windhoek are generally expensive. But if you also look at the demographics of Windhoek, being a very, very mountainous area, there's not a lot of flat land. So obviously your development cost, you've got a huge expense in terms of your development cost. So most of the developments, I think, has been sort of spread out to the outskirts of Windhoek. But I do believe the market is still robust in terms of the properties that's available within Windhoek.
So how do we move around the issue of when developers say the cost is so high, and so what role do you see the banks playing in that entire supply chain?
So, I mean, it really boils down to especially the sometimes the building methods that the consumers use.
Yeah. Okay. So we can start there by.
Kom eens hoor, jy wil weet die wat doen as developers sê die grond is duur.
Yeah. How do banks come in there? So you can probably refer also to the Ongos guys, maybe such developments and alternative building. Do you guys finance those? You see, maybe those are things that you can look at also.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Oscar, I'll just start with the question. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So as much as we say that land is expensive and the costs of the construction of houses is exorbitant, what role do you see institutions such as financiers like Letshego playing in that regard to ensure that we find a solution to this? Maybe considering engaging local authorities directly or funding alternative building models. What is it that we can think of? Because surely we need to think out of the box now.
Yeah, definitely. I think we need to rethink what we're currently doing, and I think alternative building methods is definitely one element of it, because it drives down your construction cost. If you look at the dynamics of Windhoek, being a mountainous terrain, perhaps an alternative would be to spread out. Again, you might encounter challenges with a lot of the land being farmland.
Yeah.
You might encounter challenges as well.
Okay. Talk to us about the issue, the shortage, the supply of land, the shortage thereof. How does it impact your projections and the work that you do on a daily basis when you hear the public crying about the shortage of land? What goes through your mind then?
Maybe on that, Letshego is not, we don't only provide funding for Windhoek.
Yeah.
So we've got 17 branches across the country. So we fund from the north down to the south. We provide funding all across the country. And if you really look at where most of the hotspots are in terms of developments, it's either at perhaps with the emergence of green hydrogen, being Luther's being the hotspot there, a lot of property development would generally take place there.
Just as we wrap up, Mr. Beukes, maybe just some exit remarks from your side and what the public can expect as far as Letshego is concerned going forward.
Yes, thanks, Matthew. Traditionally, Letshego has been seen as a funding tool for government employees, but I think with the banking license that we were granted in 2016, ideally we are, like I said, a fully fledged commercial bank, and we extend our services to all Namibians, all across the country. We're not limited to government employees.
Okay. No, Mr. Beukes, thank you very much for your time this evening. It was good having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Matthias.
Wish you well with your work going ahead. Well,
thank you.
To our viewers, this is from the Evening Review team. Have a pleasant evening. See you again same time, same place tomorrow.